Hey everyone, welcome to the Private Investigator Advice Podcast. This is Andrew. I am your host. It is podcast number 68. Today we're going to be talking about private investigator experience, not how to get it, but what it really means, at least what it means to me, and something you should pay attention to. If you're new to the podcast, listen, we have videos, we have, of course, plenty of articles, and the podcast you're listening to, I try to post very often. I answer questions. You could contact me on the contact page at piadvice.net. And, look forward to having you guys come back again and listen to some future content. If you are looking to be a private investigator, start at the very beginning of these podcasts. There's plenty of that information there that you might be looking for on the different jobs and what you could expect. And you can find that also on the website itself. So let's get into this podcast. Private investigator experience, right? It gets used a lot. I use it. Other investigators. That's kind of like I've been doing this so many years, or I've been licensed this many years. We use this as kind of like a point to give us credibility and say, look, we've been around the block a little bit. But it doesn't always mean that, right? Just because someone says years of experience or, I've been licensed for so many years, it's just a number. And let me explain. And I'm going to explain by telling you the story with this a friend of mine. She's a friend, a good friend, and so it's not somebody I'm trying to talk smack about or something like that. But it was an interesting story that we had. Interesting story I'm going to tell you about a conversation we had. It's about a year ago. She was just getting hired on to a company I work for part-time, and the manager asked me that I go out and evaluate her, which happened to be a two-man surveillance case. I didn't expect too much from it. It was very rural. And so when you're working rural cases and not a whole lot's going on, you have a lot of time to talk. And so we did, right? And I could tell this investigator, it's the first time I was working with her, first time I'd ever talked to her, I could tell that she was very competent, and she, definitely had experience, and I found out that she had her own business, and, she was just looking to, make some more money, so she started working for a company. And so this is all great information, good, she's got experience, this should be a breeze. And it was. I saw some things that I thought that she shouldn't have been doing, and I said, hey, don't do that. Here's the reason why. It was nothing big. It was just more like she was rusty, like she hadn't done surveillance in a while. And so anyways, we get to talking later on either the day one or day two, and she had said, I've been burned about 5 times. It was something like that. It was like a handful of times over the past. And I think she said 20 years that she'd been doing this stuff. And I said, you've only been burned 5 times? You have not done a lot of surveillance then. And I'm sure she took offense to me saying that. And I wasn't saying it to be a jerk, but it was just kind of like a matter of fact kind of thing. Like, if you've been doing this that long, then you've been burned. And if you don't think you've been burned, then maybe you just haven't noticed that you've been burned in working cases that you've been burned on. You know what I mean? Like, they knew you were watching, but you didn't realize that. And that's a whole nother thing that happens sometimes. And so she kind of, we went on to a different conversation. And I actually came back to her later that day during the surveillance. I'm like, look, I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I go, but, you talk about, 20 years you've been doing this. I go, I've been doing this full time for 10 plus years. Surveillance is what I've been doing. Many hours of doing this. I don't think you have the same amount of surveillance experience that I do. So, there's like a different sample size. It's like saying, you've done something 20 years, but you didn't do it full time 20 years. You've done it intermittently over 20 years, and that's different. And she agreed, and whatever. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't trying to be mean or I wasn't trying to be a jerk. It was just a matter of fact. Like, you can be great at surveillance, but you're still going to get burned more than that over 20 years. I probably got burned, I don't know, a couple times a month when I first started. Like, it's a learning process. It's a growing process when you do it. Anyway, so that kind of brings me into my next thing, and it's like I want you guys to understand that, numbers. When people throw out numbers, sometimes you got to take it with a grain of salt, because you don't know how much of whatever it is that they actually do. And also, especially when that comes to licensing, right? Like, people will say, "Oh, I've been licensed for 40 years. I've been a licensed private investigator." But what they don't talk to you about is that they only work like 3 cases or 5 cases a year, or maybe they only specialize in one thing, and it doesn't. Just when somebody says I'm a private investigator, that does not mean that they know how to do everything. And whatever they, if they have several services, that doesn't mean they do them proficiently. If that makes any sense, I feel like I'm very proficient at surveillance. There'd be only a handful of people that could probably do it better than I do it. It's just because you've just done it so much. But then again, I could. There's some guy out there that does background checks could probably do a background check, much better than I can. Even though I could do one, maybe he knows some extra things. It's not something I do every day. And so he's probably more proficient at it than I am. And he probably's got a little more connections because that's what he's done for 10 years. And that's all he's done. And so, there's some comparisons there. And so I just want you guys to be aware of that. And especially when you're looking for someone to listen to and learn from, just kind of have your guard up a little bit. Take the information in. It's not gospel. You can compare it to other investigators out there when you're trying to learn different things, and you will, and you'll make your own decisions on what you think is right. Especially when you start taking advice from one and the other, and one really does work and one doesn't, or especially for you. So that's what you do if you're looking for guidance. Just be careful when you're out there. Someone being licensed doesn't mean they know anything. Anybody can get licensed. Anybody can go take a test, but it doesn't mean they actually have the experience. So keep that in mind. So what does private investigator advice, experience mean to me? It doesn't mean much. Most of the time, it doesn't mean much, I should say, until I talk to somebody. The numbers someone could throw around to me doesn't mean anything until I start to talk to them, and I kind of, I don't want to say size them up, but that's kind of what happens. Like, when you talk to somebody, you either know that they know what they're talking about or they don't. Especially when you're in the industry. And this could be whatever you're doing. You could be an engineer or whatever it is. You talk to somebody, you know whether they know their stuff or not. They know, when they're faking the funk. And that's kind of what kind of how I base it off of. Like, I don't just blindly follow somebody. I have to kind of do a little research on what they're saying, or, if I'm reading about them or reading what they're saying. Same thing for me, guys. If you should definitely, if you don't believe that I'm telling the truth, you think I'm faking the funk, then you do a little research on me. What kind of experience do I have? Look me up. Don't call me, but just look at my affiliations. Do your due diligence. I don't want you to blindly trust what I'm telling you on here, even though you should, because I've been doing this for about 4 years, and I've only got your best interest at heart. Anyway, so what do I want you to get from this? What I want you to get from this is that there's nothing wrong with someone talking about their weaknesses in this industry. It doesn't happen a lot. Nobody wants to. That's not what somebody wants to talk about. They want to talk about what they're not great at. But it's okay. When I have conversations with other investigators, I'm very open. Like, I don't feel comfortable with that, or I don't feel confident enough to be doing that type of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And when you're talking to your clients, you got to do what you got to do, right? But I can't, when you're business owners and whatever, I can't make that decision for you. But I can tell you what I do is if they tell me what they want me to do and I don't feel comfortable doing it, or I don't feel confident enough in getting the whatever they need, then I refer to somebody who I think does. And that's okay. It's okay. I mean, and if you don't know it, then maybe you talk to some other investigators that can help you through it in the future, or maybe at that time. But it's okay to not know something, and I don't want you taking money from people and giving them a crappy product. I mean, I get emails all the time from people who tell me how they got screwed over, or how I just got one recently in one of the comments of one of my posts, of how they're getting stiffed by the investigator. I mean, it's just silliness. Licensed investigators, actually a legit one. Some aren't, but some are, and I don't know. Like they're not doing the work, or they don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. But yes, that was my main thing. It's okay to share your deficiencies. It's all right. And another reason why it is because if you try to sell yourself as something you can do, but you really can't to another investigator, they're going to sniff it out. I assure you. They're going to figure it out, and that's going to ruin your credibility forever. Trust me. Because if you can't be straight with somebody in that industry, they will never ask you to help them again. They will never, partner up with you. It'll be difficult to get hired if word gets out enough. It'll happen. I assure you. What was the other thing I wanted to tell you guys? If you're someone listening and you're looking for someone, if you're looking for a private investigator hire, try to get a referral, or try to get it from somebody else, or somebody try to find somebody, or find the investigator who really specializes in what you're looking for. Because licensing doesn't mean anything. It's just because someone gets licensed, like I said before, it's not a umbrella like, oh, they can do everything, or they know how to do everything. No, they don't. I assure you. And what else? Last but not least, that investigator that I told you about, we were sharing her thing. So in the past year, she's been with the company. She got burned way more than a handful of times in this last year. But it has nothing to do with her skills. She's one of the best surveillance investigators the company has. But the fact of the matter is that her sample size is much different now, working full-time, doing surveillance versus the 20 years of intermittent surveillance. And that's just the reality of it. Is she very good at what she does? Yes, she is. Burns are going to happen. And when you get burned, you need to just evaluate what you did, where you think you went wrong. Excuse me. And you got to learn from it. It's as simple as that. Those are just kind of things that happen. And, you're going to probably beat yourself up a little bit, when you first start doing this, kind of stuff. And after a while, you don't beat yourself up, and you figure out where you went wrong, and you just try not to go wrong there again. Anyways, so that's my experience thing, guys. Take it for what it's worth. I just wanted to share that with you. It was just kind of one of those things that gnawed on me for a little while about that topic, because it just irks me, because people throw that around so much, and sometimes they're just so full of crap, and it's just, I don't know. I'll get into another episode of this podcast, and I'm sure I do. If you guys haven't noticed, I do everything in threes. Like, I make a video, which can sometimes consist of a podcast, or the podcast videos. I make the audio podcast for you guys to listen to and download at home, in your phone or whatever, and then I write the article. And that's basically to appeal to any listener, reader, whatever, watcher of the podcast. So, if you don't like to read it, you can watch a video. If you don't like to watch the video, you can listen to it, whatever. And so that's kind of how I do it now. So you get 3 of everything, whatever you guys are going to do there. But I'll do another one in the future here. I've got a little bit more time on my hand than I should nowadays. So I'm going to be putting out a lot more content. It might get annoying, but it's like stuff that I've had piling up to do, and now it's about to start all happening. So I hope you like it. Still feel free to ask questions. Love the questions. Real quick, I totally got in trouble from a listener or a reader. I don't know. Somehow somebody, I didn't get back to somebody in time, or I didn't respond enough to somebody, and they got upset with me. And then, and so I told my wife about it. And I said, yeah, this lady's like, I'll never buy anything from you, or because you totally didn't answer my question. And I don't remember the lady. I don't remember her question. I don't. Sometimes it happens when it's a busy time, making actual money out there, doing PI work. I sometimes I overlook things, and it's just whatever, it happens, right? And so I haven't sold anything on my website, so I don't know what the lady was talking about. I didn't sell anything, so I don't know what she was saying. She's going to buy something from me, or she said she's going to take her money elsewhere. I'm not quite sure. But I told my wife this. I told my wife, like, this lady got mad at me. I don't even know what I did. And she says, well, did you answer a question? You should be answering those questions. I'm like, my wife didn't even back me up. I'm like, okay, you're right. I shouldn't miss any questions. I'm sorry. So if you put a question out to me, I've saved it. I've archived it. If I haven't gotten back to you, I will get back to you. I promise, in some form. Either I'll just email it back to you, the answer, or I want to make a podcast about it or something. But it'll happen. Okay. I really appreciate you guys. If you get a chance and you enjoy the podcast, if you want to go and give it a little iTunes review, that'd be super great. Or whatever device you're listening on to, give it a thumbs up, or whatever how you want to do it. It'd be greatly appreciated. The more people the more comments, the more ratings on these iTunes and whatnot, the better chance people have of finding me. And me kind of helping them out a little bit. So, again, thank you guys for your time. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen. Have a great day. Get to work safe. Whatever you guys are doing, have a great day. And we'll talk to you on the next one.